Hello, my name is Stephanie Tangway, and I'm a clinical education specialist for Motion Concepts, and I'm here today to do an introduction of the RippleFoam technology, which is standard in the Matrx E2 and E2 back. I have a standard contour E2 back here, and I've got the upholstery opened from the bottom. I've already unvelcroed it, so as I kind of rotate this, you're going to be able to notice this structural contouring, and we're going to take a very close look at that. You might even be able to feel as you run your hand across the E2 that there is a noticeable difference in this. And so we're going to take a deep dive into what RippleFoam is really all about and the value it brings to your consumer. So the RippleFoam is a high resiliency foam, but it has at the interface, the anterior interface where the consumer is engaged, this has a very different shape to it than probably any other back you've ever utilized. And it is a little bit different as it translates from the lateral aspect to the midline. So we have a flat foam at the lateral tips, and then you'll notice this translation here, which is a series of rows and ridges, and it creates a little bit more of like a ventilation highway here, a bit. And then in the center, about the center third or so of this foam, it's not just an up and down castellation or rows and ridges. It's actually solid fingers of foam that run the whole height of the back, and they're a little bit more bulbous. They're not just straight up and down, as I mentioned. And so when we have this foam into the contour of the back shell, you can see how it actually, as we pull those together, it creates more of, it almost brings these little foam fingers touching. And then we have created little tunnels in between them. Now, all of these little fingers move individually of each other, and so when I have them up like this, you can see how they give and flex. So the movement and the shaping accommodation that we see with the center aspect of the RippleFoam back is very good for accommodation. It increases not only immersion, but it's very good about accommodation and shaping around protruding bony prominences. So when you think about working with a consumer who might have severe deep back muscle atrophy, or perhaps just a little bit more kyphosed, where you see the vertebral process and more protrusion through the skin, you might be concerned that that consumer might have higher risk of developing a pressure injury point at that site. And this is going to give you, you're going to notice a much different accommodation here around those bony prominences. And we've actually got some very nice comparative pressure mapping that we've done with RippleFoam, looking at RippleFoam or flat slab foam, high resiliency foam that would be completely flat at the consumer interface, just like the foam in our old Elite back would have been, it was a great apples to apples, side by side comparison, because we have so many of the same sizes with those. And you see a very different pressure against something that's more planar and linear, pushing back against those contoured bony prominences than we see with the accommodation of the RippleFoam and being much more protective. So what we see in our comparative analysis is much improved pressure distribution and immersion without having those hot spots of direct pressure like we sometimes see with more linear foams. The other great value for RippleFoam is that the airflow of this is drastically different and superior to flat foams, where as any of us would sit interface to foam, whether it be in a back support in a wheelchair or perhaps in your car. What you're going to notice is a buildup of heat because your body's heat is absorbed and builds up in the foam, And so we have this transfer or conduction of your body's heat, and it builds up, and as it builds up in the foam, part of that heat is conducted back to us. And with this closed chamber system being integrated to foams, that's how we can see an increase in relative humidity and perhaps perspiration. So if you're concerned about that, the one thing you might find intriguing with RippleFoam is that the little rows and the tunnels that are created with this shaping do conduct and help to propel and off-vent some of that heat buildup, especially enhanced with movement of the consumer against the foam, or even more so if your consumer is able to lean forward or break direct surface contact. So if they have the physical ability, or if they can be assisted by a family member or an attendant, to lean forward and then to reposition. Even 30 seconds of breaking constant interface to this does off-vent heat out of this foam much more drastically and dynamically than it does out of solid slab foams. So we actually had our clinical education specialist from our Toronto offices, Anna Sokol, and one of our engineers did some great comparative analysis using heat sensors on back supports with flat or ripple foam, and heat and relative humidity sensors on consumers. This was actually published in a white paper that's available on the Motion Concepts website under the Matrx Seating product tab. If you're really interested in investigating this phenomenon a little bit more closely, but it really, for the consumer who you're concerned about that buildup of humidity and moisture, or just really looking for something with slightly increased immersion without having to pay an upcharge for custom, which can be so limited. We have a great aftermarket back that can fit into so many different chairs, and you get the value of this RippleFoam as a standard configuration with these E2 and E2 deep backs. So definitely want to check this out.